One of my little pet peeves is actually multivitamins or like supplement stacks. And a lot of doctors recommend multivitamins because they're just like, oh, it probably covers whatever you're deficient in, right? And I'm like, that is the number one thing I have to peel off because I do like like a deficiency screening. I end up seeing like there's too much of, I don't know, zinc, which leads to a deficiency in copper. And then everyone gets too much selenium in these vitamins for some reason. I really don't like multivitamins for this reason.
Welcome to How I Doctor, where we're bringing joy back to medicine. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Hilary Lin, a Stanford-trained internal medicine physician turned longevity entrepreneur. Hilary is the co-founder and CEO of CareCore, pioneering AI-powered, evidence-based longevity programs, and the host of The Longevity Show, where she unpacks the science behind longevity in ways that are both skeptical and practical. I am so excited to talk to Hilary today because I think she brings a rare perspective to a field that is sometimes awash in hype. She's here to help me understand where does the evidence stop and where does the marketing begin. Health systems, doctors, patients, I think we're all starving for a lot of clarity in this space. Today, she'll help us separate longevity facts from fiction. Dr. Hilary Lin, welcome to How I Doctor.
Thank you so much, Graham, for having me. I am so excited to be on this show. You do great work highlighting the work of so many doctors. So pleased to be here.
I'm going to dive right in. I told you already, I am kind of skeptical of this field, but I think that's why I wanted to talk with you because I think you probably have some skepticism as well. I think this space kind of feels like sometimes more of a marketing or a gold rush than like a medical discipline to some people, some more kind of evidence-based people like myself. And then I would say there's probably other people on the other side that think I am not accepting enough of information.
I'm with you. I believe I'm balanced, but some people are going to find me more towards one direction or another. And I actually came into this field of longevity medicine with the desire to understand everyone's perspectives. And I'm somebody who, for the last 7 years, I've been an entrepreneur. So I'm already a little bit outside the box. Like I was trained in a very academic center. I was at Stanford. I was briefly even at Columbia. So obviously these are very traditional academic research-oriented centers. And breaking free from that and becoming a tech founder was actually the first big leap. And so I say that to just give the context that I'm already a doctor that has a pretty open mind compared to your average practicing physician.
When you hear the phrase longevity medicine, what do you think see in their heads? And then what do you think maybe doctors see in their heads?
Oh, I think probably a lot of folks see Brian Johnson. He comes straight up to mind.
Yeah.
And the next thought is his erections, which then leads to a complete, people fall off a cliff in terms of, their perspective of longevity. So, not all attention is necessarily great in this field, but there's also the image that longevity medicine is for the billionaire. Like it's taking 150 supplements a day, having a team of 5 doctors and a $50,000 to $500,000 a year subscription to some concierge longevity clinic. So that's what it looks like from outside. But the reality is that it's an evolution of all of these things. It's an evolution of consumer healthcare, of digital health, of the concierge medicine space, certainly. Longevity medicine isn't a specialty, not in the same way we think of as like anesthesiology or endocrinology. It's not a medical specialty. It's a way of thinking or a perspective or a philosophy. And some people will say, and I kind of agree, that it's a little bit of a marketing term too. So at the core of it, if you want to get down to what I view longevity medicine is, it is simply good medicine with a long-term perspective. It's the synthesis of getting to know deeply an individual, getting to know the scientific frontier of medicine, good medicine, evidence-based medicine, and then applying a layer of risk versus benefit and aligning with the patient's goals.
Yeah. When I think of longevity medicine, I also think of Peter Attia. I have mixed opinions on his book. I think there's some really good things about it, but certainly the concept of health span over lifespan, and this concept of every human being have as little morbidity and as much health as for as many years as possible, such that like we all, if we're plotting health over time, we all like have 100% health and then we just drop off a cliff.
Yeah.
Then we essentially just all just, go peacefully into the night. I think there's obviously a place for people to question the healthcare system, question the way that things are done, how medicine works. I mean, that's often how we learn new information, how we find new discoveries is people questioning what we assume is true.
Absolutely. I think if we all just practice exactly what we were taught in med school and residency forever and ever, we would be stuck in the 1900s and we might be pretty good at saving lives here and there, but we wouldn't actually progress. And I was speaking to someone about this topic. They were saying, it's like, how much do you think longevity is pure hype? Will this trend die? And I'm like, well, I don't actually think people are going to get tired of living as healthily as long as possible. That's not a thing that's going to go away. It might be called something else, but we've seen wellness forever. Now it's just being morphed into this longevity medicine phrasing. And so, unless something terrible happens to the earth, like a giant catastrophe, World War III, famine, like that will turn us backwards because, obviously. But as long as civilization continues to proceed, we're going to demand more and more out of healthcare. It's not just going to be saving our lives at the brink of death. It's going to be more and more towards prevention and more towards, honestly, looking and feeling good.
I'm an evidence-based guy. I created MD Calc and the NNT, and I really do care about the kind of the scientific method, and that there are few ways in the world to figure out causation besides like a randomized trial. So maybe let's start with the big question. What longevity interventions actually truly have strong evidence behind them?
Yeah. Well, this one's not going to come as a huge surprise, I believe, to your listeners. These are the pillars of regular movement. I say movement because people think of exercise as like a thing you have to do in the gym, but it's really movement. Walking is perhaps the most impactful longevity exercise out there, and most of us do almost none of it all all day anymore. And there's, of course, what you're putting inside your body, both in terms of nutrition and toxins and so forth. And not smoking, we forget about that because we don't see it as much, but avoiding the big problems like smoking, alcohol use to a certain extent. And also, I think people forget about this in longevity because it's so hard to address is a purpose, relationships, having that tight-knit group of
Absolutely.
connections. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, and I shouldn't forget, managing chronic stress. We are a world of incredibly chronically stressed human beings, and that has probably done more damage than I think we give credit to.
Yeah. And I think the other one that I often hear about is just good sleep. Both
Oh,
both the
yeah.
quality of
Yeah,
sleep and
recovery, yeah.
the amount of sleep as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that one is both so hard, but, like, once you achieve a threshold, it's like a set and forget thing, so I literally forgot about it since my sleep has recently been solved, so, yeah.
And I'll just point out that all of those are, I think, very widely studied over decades, and they're all free. I mean, when you fundamentally get down to it, if the benefits of exercise or good sleep or eliminating loneliness and having good social relationships with other people that you care about, if those were drugs, the benefits of them would on the market cost like $100,000 a month
Oh, yeah.
because they are so good for us.
Yeah. The problem we all see is that we are so influenced by modern living. And I was writing about this problem where most of us know about all of these things. Like it's not rocket science at all. But like how many of us are willing to give up our way of life? And I'll just give myself as an example. I live in an apartment in New York City and I work from a home office. And therefore, I have to intentionally plan all of that movement in there. So I end up doing things like I have this under desk treadmill that I'm walking on and I go to the gym very intentionally as a result. So, and it's because I've decided that this is my way of life. Like me and in my household, we we make our living and we do all of our things that purpose, which is so important, is driven off of screens, unfortunately.
Yeah. It does feel like we're in a weird Goldilocks moment where there's this duality that patients want their physicians to both talk more about this stuff. They want us to, I often hear physicians criticized for not bringing up diet or not bringing up exercise, but at the same time there's other patients that say, god, all my doctor says I need to exercise more and that should solve my problems. You're absolutely right, though all of those things are fundamentally critical to a well body and a well mind and health span.
Yeah. I think what it is everyone on social media is just using, this as fodder. Like they'll say anything. Like people, influencers, it sells if you are just being provocative. So I actually think that we're all actually missing the big picture. So doctors are like very traditional doctors. Let's just say 90% of doctors are still very skeptical of this field of longevity medicine. And I understand it's very provocative in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of snake oil salesmen. But it's, think back to how we were trained to practice medicine. A lot of that is also very dubious. Like I recall, like even throughout residency, like certain things you simply don't do because they might end up staying an extra day in the hospital or something, or they would result in a bounce back, or like, they would take up too much time. So just give them the drug. And so you have to think very deeply about like, why is it that you think a certain way? And how can you be a bit more nuanced? And the problem for all of us doctors is that we have no time to sit back and
Yeah.
really consider all of these questions.
Ever feel like everyone else in healthcare is making money hand over fist, while doctors are the ones always getting pay cuts? That's where Off Call comes in. At Off Call, we're helping doctors take back control of medicine. The next time you're asked to see more patients in less time, or forced to submit yet another prior authorization for your patients, Off Call is here to help. Visit offcall.com and sign up today to join a community that's putting doctors back in control of their careers.
Hillary, you mentioned influencers. Are there common tropes or practices or products that you see that you just are constantly cringing at because you either know are snake oil or are so overblown in how much they're hyped?
The entire supplement industry is problematic. I'm not against supplements. I actually think some supplements are very valuable, and I've completely done a 180 on this. I actually used to tell people, I'm like, we don't need supplements, just eat better and you'll be fine. And then I realized I'm like, okay, obviously not most of us don't get enough sun. Like, I don't know, there's a few things that certain supplements are necessary for. But I think there's maybe like a 0.1% of the entire world of potential supplements that is actually proven to be helpful in any which way. Then if you like open up that Venn diagram, there's, a bunch of supplements which are probably not harmful except for your wallet. And then there's more that are probably harmful because they're interacting with something. And then there's those that are just like contaminated with heavy metals and things like that. It's a very big field of problematic products with a few valuable things. And it's hard to sort of discern what all those things are. People have to be really careful. I had a fun interaction with a couple at a wedding recently where they found out that I was like, oh, you're in longevity, you're a doctor. Tell me what you think about this bar that I'm taking. And then the argument between the husband and wife was the wife is like, he yells at me if I'm like eating an apple. He says I should just eat this bar, which is completely balanced. It's not just sugars. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, obviously, the apple is a more whole food, and
Yeah.
we have evolved to digest this in a food matrix. And then a bar, even if it fulfills all the macros, like
It
on,
has to be
it's
processed. Yeah.
absolutely processed. And there's, a lot of things you don't pick up just from reading a label. And so that is a big problem with this field. I think we struggle in this field between what is easier to produce and sell versus what is actually good for you.
From your perspective as a physician and an expert, and then maybe for listeners who aren't in medicine at all, how would you personally evaluate a new longevity claim? Say I tell you that walnut skins improve brain function. How are you going to go about thinking about if that's true or not? And then how should maybe a layperson think about that?
Yes. Okay. So I would say first thing is use your knowledge base. So as a physician, is there a clinical biological plausibility based on our understanding of digestion and
So could it even make sense that, yeah, maybe if it's like I'm putting walnut skins on my feet,
yeah,
that probably doesn't, there's probably not a way that you can make that molecularly work to cause an improvement in brain function.
and then yeah, so step number 1 is does it even check the common sense box in terms of physiology and science? And then step number 2 is let's look at the research. So research is so tricky, and you probably have seen this too, but there's this influx of fraud in scientific papers. So we have to be careful, but look at is there preclinical data in model organisms like mice or yeast or something? Are there human studies? And are they purely observational? Are they interventional? What was the effect size? So this is getting a little bit, harder for the lay person to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's when I look at it. And then actually something that some people miss is was this funded by the company selling the product? Um, has it been replicated? I think that's really important is replication. And there was a big example of collagen for skin that came out where there was an analysis of quality and funding of collagen for skin studies. And it found out that if it was funded by the study and if it was lower quality, it found more likely benefits of collagen for skin.
Sure.
And then, the opposite was true. So, like, you have to be careful. And then this is, I'm going to say something that is probably different from a lot of people in this field, which is what are the potential risks versus benefits? And I say that because some people, they just want to try it. They're going to buy those almond skins no matter what. And nothing I say, I'm like, there's no evidence, like, it doesn't matter. They will buy it. And so I just have to find out, is it going to hurt them?
Mm.
Or simply is it just a waste of their money? If it's that, then, it's a free world. You can spend your money how you like.
Are there resources for lay people that help them assess maybe it's supplements or it's longevity claims at all?
Oh my gosh. So people will point to a few different resources, and I think they do an okay job. So examine.com is a very well-known one for supplements. Having
Examine.com,
Yeah.
founded by my college roommate.
Oh my goodness. Okay, good work, good work.
Shout out Kamal Patel.
All right. Well, I think it's amazing, and it's
They really do great work.
yes. And but it's getting hard. Like,
Yeah.
frankly, I think there's more and more research popping out everywhere, and I actually don't know that it's feasible to stay on top of it. So I don't have a particular resource to point to. That's going to be extremely dissatisfying. But if you are using AI, because I know you all are using AI, then double check that they are using real references. Use different models to check one another. That's a trick that you could do, and ask it to summarize it for a person that is very specific like you. If you're thinking about something for you, you want to give it all the context possible. Like, it's not just like, are almond skins good for whatever person and living longer? It's going to be like for you of this, genetic type of, age of this past medical history, these symptoms and so forth.
I would posit, I would bet that most physicians probably take fewer supplements and fewer additional things that we wouldn't call medicines because, I think there's like a belief that if there's evidence behind it, it turns into a medicine. We use magnesium in the hospital for preeclampsia, for example, but we wouldn't recommend that as a supplement to people if it's not appropriate for a medical indication because it hasn't been studied. Do you think that's
The way I view it is we all come with our own biases. And as doctors, we've been trained to work in the sickest world ever. And
yeah?
so we're trying to save people in really a dire situation. And so to us, a small complaint like, oh, my muscles ache a little bit longer than I wish they did after a workout is going to be like, oh, yeah, whatever, just live with it. Um, it's not even worth thinking about. And I hear more and more there's a lot of consumers, a lot of patients out there who are starting to say is like, I don't trust a doctor if they don't look like they're fit and healthy. And I'm like, I get it. I mean, who can blame us for being unhealthy after everything we've been through in training? But I also understand when someone's looking at us, we are our own advertisements for our field. I think most doctors think of medications as, serious things to take and probably the biggest and best tool. And it's because of our training in the sick field. It's because of our influence by big pharma, frankly. And it's because we're focused on research that's extremely siloed and reductionist to be like, how many blood pressure points can I move?
Yeah.
XYZ drug. So I think, we just need to pull out of that. We have the brains, we have the training to understand science beyond just medicine 2.0 or reactive sick healthcare. We can understand the rest of it without, going through another fellowship. So I think it's a perspective change and also recognizing that everything you feel so strongly, you can let go of. I know that's probably the hardest part.
Hillary, you earlier mentioned that you don't think longevity medicine is a specialty, maybe in the way that you and I would talk about other medical specialties. But do you have a sense for where this industry is going to go, or maybe where you'd like it to go?
I feel like we're going to see the more clinical evolution of wellness plus longevity. And then we're going to continue to see the very pseudoscientific version of both. So I think of it as a quality thing. A version of longevity is here to stay. It is basically the new word that a lot of people are using for wellness. Some people will argue it's more evidence-based wellness, or if it's
Mm.
more clinical wellness. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, we'll make up the definition for what this term means. Um, that's just language. But I think there's going to be a clear difference between people who are legitimately thinking about the science behind all of these interventions, and then there's going to continue to be people who address the conspiracy thinkers essentially and sort of feed them whatever they want, and it's not going to be scientifically based.
What do you think the role is with primary care and longevity? Is it something that primary care should be adopting, like you said, as evidence-based prevention or evidence-based wellness?
Yeah. Oh, this is a tough one because it depends on your population. So, everything about the way we do guidelines and also how insurance decides what to cover is based on population statistics. And if we're talking about longevity medicine, it is by nature N of one. You can't apply population based anything, guidelines or otherwise, to an N of one. I think it's implausible to believe that primary care as we know it could potentially evolve in this way. We all have friends who are primary care providers, and they're just completely overwhelmed. They've got like a panel of 1,000, 3,000, 5,000. I don't even know how many patients you can see at once. And it's just not the way that even they went into primary care for. Like,
Hillary, you mentioned Brian Johnson earlier. I agree with you. He's a very well-known biohacker influencer, taking longevity to the, crazy degree, in my opinion, personally. I get the sense that Brian Johnson thinks that whatever his outcomes end up being are applicable to anyone besides Brian Johnson and maybe his kid. Maybe, because
they're related.
they're related. But this is fundamentally the challenge that I have with longevity medicine is it's an N of one. And so you and I both know, we see this all the time. Two people can both be exposed to the flu and only one of them gets it. And so we know that individuals have all of these unique characteristics that we cannot quantify yet, at least.
Yeah.
And so how can we as physicians say, yeah, you should do this, not that, when every single one of us is so unique and different?
I completely agree with you that the main problem with not only Brian Johnson, but the entire idea of communicating to a broad audience a specific protocol is the fact that there's no perfect protocol. I agree with you because that's a great example to start with because I ran into somebody who was like, "Oh, Stacey Sims says, women shouldn't do cold plunges because it's like it'll raise your cortisol." I'm like, "Well, okay, I think you've taken that to the very far extreme conclusion. And yes, it increases your cortisol, but that may be good temporarily for some people as hormesis. But if you're already, at the end of your rope, you definitely don't want more cortisol slash stress. And so it really depends on you. The reason there's these debates is because there's no one right answer for all
Yeah.
of us. But it makes for great fodder for engagement. And I think that's exactly what Brian Johnson is doing. Like he's starting a lot of controversy and he's done a great job for what it's worth of highlighting the field by saying random controversial things. And so use that information for what you will. One of my little pet peeves is actually multivitamins. Or like supplement stacks. And I know it's not just Brian Johnson. Like a lot of doctors recommend multivitamins because they're just like, oh, it probably covers whatever you're deficient in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is the number one thing I have to peel off because I do like a deficiency screening. I end up seeing like there's too much of, I don't know, zinc, which leads to a deficiency in copper. And then everyone gets too much selenium in these vitamins for some reason. And so like, I really don't like multivitamins for this reason. But it's just part of the overall problem, which is that people assume that there is the right way to do longevity where there simply isn't. The ideal solution is that everybody essentially gets a full medical school's worth of education about human physiology, but
Yeah.
not realistic. So we're in the situation where we're trying to do our best.
It does feel like this fundamental tension with kind of influencers and that woman saying women shouldn't do cold plunges. And the way that a physician approaches a patient is the exact opposite of that. That we almost can't say make recommendations to anybody besides the patient in front of us because we know that the person that we're talking to is a completely unique individual.
Mhm.
You might say, well, everybody should go for a 1 mile walk every day. But then the person that just broke their leg, that actually doesn't apply to. But I think the kind of the longevity influencer people don't feel that responsibility or view that as a concern, I think, at all.
Well, some of them simply don't have that knowledge. They're out of their
Sure.
depth.
Yeah.
Just to turn an optimistic spin on it, I think for what it's worth, longevity and, even health and wellness influencers out there, this is a positive movement because people are so much more engaged about their health,
Sure.
and they're taking charge and they're more willing to experiment. And my hope is that we just are more knowledgeable and we go towards experimentation with care and caution and not do too risky, harmful things.
Like, what's the happy medium? What's the vision that you have specifically for what a longevity practice or what a patient who's interested in this, what do they get and what do they do?
Wow, the ideal world would not look like a clinic at all, or it would be like a smart home that coached me into doing all of these things. And so and back to those pillars that we mentioned, those lifestyle pillars. Yes, they are the most important. They are also the hardest to enact because that's behavior change. And like we mentioned, it's the underpinnings of why people don't do those have to do with modern living. And so in my ideal world, it would literally be like either a human or a robot coach. We joke in my household. It's like we just need a robot to like pull us out of bed and then like push us into the the cold plunge, wake us up, and then push us onto the treadmill.
Yeah.
Like, the
And push you back in bed at the end of the day. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So there's a wild potential world out there, but I mean, I don't want to diminish people like challenges is what I'm trying to say because a lot of folks are going to listen to this and be like, "Oh my gosh, like well, yes, I know I'm supposed to like run, eat and sleep or whatever, but that's just not possible. You don't get it." And I was early on the GLP-1 agonist boat, but a lot of doctors really didn't like the entire class of medications because it felt like cheating. And suddenly people were able to lose weight and get fit because of a drug rather than what we'd been telling them all along, which was to eat well and exercise. In the meanwhile, patients were like, oh, well, it was just so hard to get over the hump. Like, motivation isn't just like someone nagging at you; it's momentum. So once you get momentum, you're like, okay, now I can imagine myself as a healthy, fit person, and I'm going to keep this up.
Hillary, how do you set realistic expectations for patients who maybe come in hoping for miracles or, maybe they have some chronic health conditions that are not going to go away no matter how perfect their diet, exercise, sleep, stress reduction
Yeah,
is?
yeah. Well, I view it as everybody can improve their well-being.
Growth mindset.
Yeah, growth mindset. Exactly so. So everybody, even if you have a pretty long set chronic illness, let's just say, so you can always feel better, or at least have a little bit of a change in your symptoms. And it might be peeling off something that you're relying on, whether it's like a medication or like a crutch, little crutch, or something like that. So I set expectations that way. No one actually comes in asking me how to live forever, because people know that they're not going to live forever. And most people don't actually aspire to that.
Right.
They're really just trying to feel good for as long as possible. And I think most people are very happy with that. The field of longevity medicine, the reason why the most effective interventions are still the lifestyle ones are because we're still in the deep science phase of lifespan extension. And so I'm not saying that we will never have a drug that will slow down the pace of aging. I actually think that that's very possible within our lifetime. Uh, but we're not there. And it might be another 30 years before we have any inkling of what that first drug is. But long story short, I just tell people we're just here to make your life better. And there's always something, whether it's your mood, your sleep, or your energy levels, or your cognition. There's always something that we can improve.
What's maybe one scientific development in the next 5 or 10 years that would excite you the most?
Something that is proven to actually reverse or slow the pace of aging would excite me so much. We have nothing that is really proven. We have a lot of guesses for like certain repurposed drugs that might help, but nothing real yet. So right now, the field of medicine is all about diagnosis and screening for specific diagnoses. So you either have cancer or you don't have it. But what about a world where you could be like, you have a little bit of cancer, or like you're edging towards having the diagnosis of cancer, and then let's quickly do something like. And so we're entering a world where diagnoses of pre-disease is becoming more and more realistic, and that's how our body works. Like we don't just develop a disease that suddenly.
Yeah.
It's a gradient that goes towards it. So that's coming out for everything.
And the idea is you draw my blood and you look at the actual proteins in my blood that are suggesting that, this combo of these three proteins being high, says I'm headed toward X
Yeah.
condition, maybe.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly, and not even blood. I've talked to some companies that use, like, saliva,
Huh. Okay.
and at first I was like, "Oh, that's straight," but then, like, the world of saliva testing became so exciting to me because blood draws, obviously, you have all the problems, you have to get to the blood and through needles, through whatever, and the saliva route means that you could even have a device at home
Sure.
that's, like, just a point of care testing that you do every day. Today, I'm edging towards cancer a little bit more. But I keep
Yeah.
using cancer.
Yeah.
But there's even a company that's coming out with a retainer that you can put a
Huh.
test in, and so it just sits on a tooth, and it's like testing these sorts of proteins day to day and giving you a readout. Like I think they're envisioning it as like a Bluetooth connection to like an app on your phone.
Yeah.
So that is the world that I would love to be in because that's when we can really do experimentation as to is it like are antioxidants actually helpful for anything at all is exercise for certain people in this way actually effective for decreasing things in a very specific precise way.
You can get rid of one overhyped longevity trend. Which one is it?
So red light therapy for anything except very, very slow cosmetic outcomes is probably not realistic for.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. My last quick question, Hillary. What is aging?
Oh my gosh. So
Give me you get 30 seconds to define aging.
okay. It is essentially our body breaking down. And why is a big scientific mystery. We don't know if it's a fact of life. A lot of people think of it as entropy like. So it's simply going to happen. And some other people believe strongly that that's an oversimplification because there's other animals that don't do that at the same rate. And so there's a lot of hallmarks of aging. And I would even say that the hallmarks are not the definition of aging. They're simply ways we're trying to have a
They're a sign of it. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So we don't know.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a common trend in science and discovery is the more you think you know, you just unearth more questions,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is how the scientific process is supposed to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Hillary Lynn, it has been an absolute pleasure. Hillary, where can people find you and support the work that you're doing?
So you can find me everywhere at Hillary Lynn MD, HILLARYLINMD, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. It's the same handle, and HillaryLynnMD.com.
Amazing. Hillary, thank you again. Total pleasure. I've learned so much about longevity today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me today. For interviews with physicians creating meaningful change, check out offcall.com/podcast. You can find How I Doctor on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have new episodes weekly. This has been and continues to be Dr. Graham Walker. Stay well, stay inspired, and practice with purpose.